Hello everyone and welcome into my NBA playoffs discussion here on May 8th, 2022. As we're in the second round, all four series are at 2-1 in favor of the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Phoenix Suns, and of course the Golden State Warriors, who also won last night. So I've been talking a lot about how I want to mix up the content on this channel, bring in more discussion for more topics. This is what it's going to look like. We're going to be talking sports, we're going to be talking entertainment. Let's talk about the NBA playoffs because I really think when we're looking at the second round, this is exactly what the NBA wants. The NBA is a star-driven league, and you want to see star power, and we're seeing all of the NBA's big stars in Giannis, obviously, Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Ja Morant, Jason Tatum. They're all involved in this round. Really, the only one we're missing right now is Nikola Jokic, the Joker, who is likely going to be the two-time MVP after this season. The Denver Nuggets obviously struggled this year a lot with injuries. Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray out for the entire season. So I really expect them to be better next year, and they were also in this loaded Western Conference where they got stuck with the Warriors in round one. A lot of people wanted to see more out of the Joker in that series. I actually thought he played pretty well. He just absolutely had no help. But now we're here in the second round, and really the Joker is the only star we're missing. Of course, we've got, Durant and LeBron James and all of those guys out, but that's kind of the older generation. I'm talking more about the new wave of talent when we're talking about the Tatums, the Giannis's, the Bookers of the world, the Ja Morants. These are the guys that are kind of taking over the league for the next generation. And that's why I'm so excited that these are the teams that we're left with right now. So let's just go series by series individually because obviously the storylines and everything going on in each series is pretty different. So I want to focus on each of them individually. I'll try to make my Milwaukee Bucks favoritism at the most minimal level because I know there's a lot else going on. But exciting times for the Bucks, especially after a thrilling win last night. So let's start with the Philadelphia 76ers against the Miami Heat. The Heat are up 2-1 in that series. So I talked a lot about the star power that is remaining in these playoffs. The Miami Heat is probably the one team where that's not so much of an example. They're just a really, really solid roster. You could argue that Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo at this point are both top 30 players in the league, but then you have Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry. It's just a very, very solid roster, and you have guys that play their roles well. Victor Oladipo has been playing very well in this series. So it looked at first, especially with the Joel Embiid injury, and Joel Embiid is, when I was mentioning all the stars before, I should have put him in there because obviously he was in the top 3 in the MVP race this year. This is a guy who has made his name in the NBA the past few seasons, and we can now consider him a superstar in this league. He has been injured, his face, his hand, all sorts of things. You just got to feel bad for the guy because he always seems to run into that problem. And I don't think that's anything with his preparation or anything. I think that, he used to be a little lazy with that, but this year he really bulked up and he looked like he was in great shape. And he was playing the best basketball of his career, obviously. He was the front runner in the MVP race for a long time. Now he's running into these kind of freak injuries like an orbital bone. That's nothing to do with preparation or conditioning. That's just, a bad break within a game. So luckily he is back for Philadelphia because that changed everything in that game 3. And now the series is at 2-1. I still think Miami is going to win this series either in 5 or 6 games. I would lean more towards 6 games now that Embiid is back. But it just seems like Miami is too much for this team. And with Philadelphia, I always kind of struggle because, James Harden is jumping from team to team, and he has never been to the NBA Finals except for with Oklahoma City when he was kind of like the 6th man on that very, very young and star-studded roster with Durant and Westbrook as well. Since that point, he has not been able to return to the NBA Finals, and it just seems like every team that he's on, yes, he can shoot threes. He has that incredible step-back move. He is probably one of the more talented offensive players we've ever seen, but it doesn't translate into success in the playoffs. And for whatever reason, it's not really, you can't pinpoint it to one thing. He's not really as ball dominant as he used to be with this Philadelphia team, but it just seems like any team that he is involved with, it's not destined to be an NBA Finals or just a contending team in general. The Miami Heat present a really unique challenge to any team that they play because they can have one guy be the main focus in their offense any given night. Tyler Hero was actually their leading scorer in the regular season. So, obviously Jimmy Butler had injuries and everything. He's back healthy. We have Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Victor Oladipo. All of these guys can be your number one offensive threat. And then, of course, they have a really solid defense, and Adebayo is probably one of the better rim protectors in this league. I just think that Miami presents too many obstacles for Philadelphia to overcome. I expect them to win this in 5 or 6 games. We'll see what happens tonight. It could obviously change really quickly if Embiid is able to continue his success after coming back. He had a really nice game 3. I expect him to play well in game 4 tonight as well. But it's just the whole mix of Philadelphia. I like Tobias Harris as a player. Most people say he's kind of overpaid and should just be kind of a role player. I like the role that he plays within that Philadelphia offense rather. I think that obviously Matisse Thybulle is one of the better defenders in the league. You also have Tyrese Maxey playing at a high level, but it just doesn't seem to be gelling in the right way. And they looked dangerous at times, especially when Embiid was on his A game. And I just don't know if that's the same team. They've gone through too much. I expect Miami to be able to win this series. Now let's talk about the other Eastern Conference semifinal matchup, the Boston Celtics and my Milwaukee Bucks. I am, of course, a Milwaukee native, and believe me, I went through a lot of pain and a lot of bad years with this team, so I kind of feel like we deserve this. People always say, like, oh, now everyone cares about the Bucks. Trust me, there were people that cared about the Bucks. I loved the Brandon Jennings, Andrew Bogut era. I loved the Michael Redd era. Desmond Mason, TJ Ford before he got hurt. Trust me, we've been through a lot of bad years, and we deserve the success. Giannis Antetokounmpo is arguably the greatest player in the NBA right now. I understand that I'm biased when I say that, and I probably am not the greatest source for that opinion, but at the same time, I'm not the only one that says it. There's other people out there that are starting to realize that this guy and his physical dominance, the way he is able to get to the hoop, pretty much through any defender. They try to build a wall against him. That's what you always hear when teams are playing against him in the playoff series. He finds cracks through that wall. Otherwise, he finds teammates that are open. Giannis is really starting to become the star of this league, perhaps the next LeBron James figure or Kobe Bryant figure in this league. And I'm so excited because it's just so different than, obviously Steph kind of had that title for a while. Steph Curry with his incredible three-point prowess and the way he kind of changed the game into a more three-point heavy focus for a lot of teams. But with Giannis, it's the complete opposite. He can shoot the three every once in a while. It's very inconsistent. Sometimes he hits it pretty well. Sometimes it's awful. His free throws have been here and there as well. He had a really bad stretch last year in the playoffs with free throws. He's been a little bit better, but now starting to struggle in this series again. Where Giannis excels is when he's driving to the basket and when there's very few defenders in the world that can actually stop him. They try to draw the charge. You really see like these guys like Grant Williams and Al Horford. Whenever they're like trying to get in front of him, they just go flying the minute he touches them. And a lot of times there's no foul call because it's like, okay, this is just physical basketball. I really want to dig into that kind of idea because I know there's a lot of Boston people in particular that are saying, okay, look, Giannis is just bullying this defense, and it really seems like a lot of fouls could be called when he's driving to the hoop. My argument to that would be, okay, didn't we just hear all about how Boston's defense was so aggressive and so physical against Brooklyn in the last series and how they shut down Kevin Durant and they just played so physical, so hands-on. But now that the Bucks are doing that, and especially on the offense too, with Giannis driving to the hoop, they're just playing very aggressive basketball. Now, we can't have that anymore. There's also always this argument that you hear that, today's NBA players, they could have never made it in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, it was so much more physical. You could never have like a Steph Curry or a James Harden in the 80s or 90s. Yeah, maybe not, but you could have a Giannis, and I don't want to hear it anymore. There was actually comments made by Charles Oakley, the New York Knicks legend. He doesn't think that Giannis would make it in the 80s and 90s. Dude, Giannis would crush it in the 80s and 90s. They would try to build that wall in the same way that you're seeing it now, but they'd be less effective because they weren't as athletic back then. They may have been more bullying, they may have been more physical, but they were not as athletic, and Giannis is getting around some of the best athletes in the world when he drives to the hoop. We are also missing our second superstar, Chris Middleton. I know, superstar. People, try to not give that title to Chris Middleton. He's a multi-time All-Star now. I don't want to hear the disrespect from Chris Middleton anymore. We are missing Chris Middleton in this series immensely. This is a guy who is able to create his own offense. He's able to play in ISO. And this is what would work really well when Boston's trying to clog the lane for Giannis. They just don't want Giannis to be able to beat them. So whenever Giannis gets a full head of steam and they start kind of just building the wall, trying to take a charge, that's when Middleton could really, really torch this this Boston Celtics defense. And he's not able to do it because he has an MCL sprain, and it's likely that he's not going to be able to play in the rest of this series. I think the Bucks are missing Chris Middleton so much, and this would be a very different series if he was involved. But what can you do? Injuries are a part of the game. We saw that last year with a lot of teams. Injuries are just something that happens, and you have to adjust to it on the fly. I think for the most part, the Bucks have done a pretty good job at adjusting. You're seeing Wes Matthews in a bigger role. You're seeing Grayson Allen, especially in the first round, having to take more shots. He hasn't been as effective in the second round. I will agree with that. We'll see if that changes in games 4 and 5. But Giannis is just showing that when he gets a full head of steam and he has the ball, there's very little that can be done to stop him. Really, the only thing is to try to take a charge or to try to, steal it. A lot of people are trying to swat the ball when he's coming through. But the way that he has that Euro step and he's able to get around, even when they have 3 defenders down there, sometimes he's able to find a way through that and get to the hoop. I'm just so amazed with what Giannis has been able to do. 42 points last night, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, very close to another triple-double. He's already had one in these playoffs already. Now, could Boston come back in the series? Of course they could. This is still, it's 2-1. There's still a lot of basketball to be played. And keep in mind that Jason Tatum had an absolutely awful game last night. I do want to credit Wes Matthews with fantastic defense on Jason Tatum for the most part. And I really think that lended itself well to them being able to stop him, but he also was just off. So Jason Tatum is a very, very talented offensive player, and Jaylen Brown and Al Horford and those guys, they need his help in game 4. If he is able to play more towards his normal self, I definitely think Boston has a chance to take that game. So we'll see how that turns out. Now let's move over to the Western Conference, where we have the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors, who played last night. The Warriors taking a 2-1 lead very, very handily. Memphis was never really in this game. Obviously, the big conversation was Ja Morant's injury and Jordan Poole grabbing his knee. Personally, I don't think that looked malicious at all. I think he was going for the ball and then accidentally kind of grabbed on it. Plus, it's Jordan Poole. It's not like it's Giannis out there. I don't think that him ripping his knee back would actually, I don't know if he has the arm strength to actually be able to injure Ja. I think Ja was actually probably hurt before that point. And I do hope that Ja's okay, because he's been so just exhilarating to watch in this playoffs. He's been absolutely electric. The way that he is able to just fly off the court. He has the craziest hops that perhaps we've ever seen in the NBA. But I think that Golden State has really taken control of this series. Obviously the first 2 games were very close. They could have dropped that first game. It could very easily have been 2-0 Memphis heading back to Golden State. But they stole that game right at the end. Ja couldn't make that layup. And I just think that's going to be the difference in the series. I think the Warriors win this one in 5. I think it's pretty much over from this point, especially since they have another home game coming up for game 4. And I really don't see how this electric offense, now with Klay Thompson back, Draymond Green has been more of his old self that we used to see back in the height of the Warriors dynasty. He's starting to look like that Draymond Green again, and I just don't see Memphis being able to overcome that. Although I do think Memphis is one of the more promising rosters as we're going on into the next few years, because they're so young and so talented. So I don't think this is going to be the last we're going to hear from the Memphis Grizzlies. In fact, I think next year they're probably the team to watch in the Western Conference. But at least for this year, I think Steph and company is going to take care of business and they're going to move on. Now, the last series that we have to talk about is the Phoenix Suns against the Dallas Mavericks. This one is actually a little more interesting to me now, because Luka Doncic in the first 2 games was absolutely unstoppable, even though Phoenix won both of those games. And it seemed like he actually took a little bit of a step back for game 3. Still ended up with 26 points, so still a very solid performance. But it seemed like Dallas had more of a team mentality going on, and they looked a lot better. I think Jalen Brunson has been one of the bright spots of this series when you're talking about just like a surprise player coming out and really, really playing well. So I've been impressed by Jalen Brunson in this series. They have a lot of talent. I think Dwight Powell is a great rim protector. He's useful on the offensive end as well. Obviously, Finney Smith is a great shooter. You have Spencer Dinwiddie, who plays a really important role in that point guard role. I think Dallas actually has a chance to make this a series. I'm still going to go with the Phoenix Suns because I think that they're just too talented. And I do think that they're going to make a return to the NBA Finals. I would absolutely love to see a rematch between the Suns and the Bucks. Obviously Bucks from my biased point of view, but I just think that was such a fantastic series and just two really, really talented teams going at each other. I'd love to see that rematch, especially since Chris Paul, in his old age, now 37 years old, he's going to be gunning for a ring, and I just don't think anything's going to stop Chris Paul from getting that Western Conference championship as well. Devin Booker, we still don't know if he's actually fully healthy, and that is something to watch for the rest of the series as well. He is obviously playing and has been back for a while, but I just can't really tell if he is completely 100% healthy, and that is something to keep track of. I think that Dallas makes this a series, and it perhaps goes to 7 games, especially if Luka is able to facilitate as well as he has to his teammates and just kind of share the ball. They were really, really hard to stop in that game 3, and I think that could continue tonight in game 4. So I expect Dallas to make this a little bit more of a series. Still going with the Suns. I would lean towards Suns in 6, but if it does go to a game 7, I'd be happy to watch that as well because it's been a very, very entertaining series. So that's what I got so far. I'm so excited about where the NBA is as a whole. I think it is one of the most entertaining sports leagues in the entire world right now, and they have so much talent coming up, so much young talent, and it is Giannis's league right now, in my opinion, and I know I'm biased, but in my opinion, I think it is Giannis's league, but that title could be taken from him in an instant. Devin Booker is gunning for it. Nikola Jokic next year, if he's able to come back with a renewed roster for the Nuggets, he wants that as well. Luka Doncic is only 23 years old. You know that he's gunning for it. Joel Embiid, he's never out of the conversation either as long as he's healthy. So there's just a lot to be excited about with the NBA right now, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the second round. We're going to be talking more about the NBA as we go towards the finals, and I'm looking forward to engaging in that conversation. If you guys have anything to add, be sure to put that in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to respond to you. Thanks for being open-minded and watching new content on this channel. I really do appreciate it. I know that this is a drastic change from what I'm usually doing on the channel, but I'm excited to expand my horizons. And don't worry if you like the other content better. There's still going to be a lot of Bitcoin and finance content coming up. A lot to talk about, a lot going on with the price. So we will be talking about that quite a bit. So, I just want to expand what I'm talking about. I want to expand the conversation and just be a little bit more active in posting. I just think that if you're only focused on one topic, it's hard to post every day. So I'm trying to expand my horizons and just talk about more things. I will also be bringing on more voices and more people to have these discussions with, because it gets a little exhausting just talking by myself, but I do want to have more conversations. You guys can be part of that conversation as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really, really helps me out, and I hope to see you in the next video.